thank you very much. It's a real honour to be here and an immense privilege. And I'm going to talk to you about public ownership. Thanks to Labour's bold, brave public ownership policies, 30 years of ideology is crumbling. The water companies, the rail industry, the National Grid, the Royal Mail, they're all getting on the defensive in the media and defending privatisation, because they know that we know the truth, that shareholders have had an outrageously good deal for 30 years at the expense of the rest of us. The game is up, the scam is over. The question now is how and when we take these industries into public ownership. The regulators, the shareholders, the bosses, the industry lobby groups, they're not happy that this is on the agenda. But the thing is, this isn't about them. It's about the pensioner shivering because they can't get through the winter because the energy companies are charging too much. It's about the student who can't take the train because they can't afford it, and the Southern Rail commuter who can't get to work. It's about the family in Cornwall who had raw sewage flowing past their house, and the dead fishes and the polluted beaches because South West Water would rather pay fines than look after our environment in the most basic of ways. It's about the care worker who doesn't have time to have a cup of tea with a housebound, vulnerable person because the people at the top are making 12% profit. It's about the child whose academy school funding has been mismanaged and their parent who wants a say in what happens next. It's about the older person isolated in a village where there's no buses left, even though if profits had been reinvested, we would have those buses. It's about postal workers being undermined, and it's about everyone in Birmingham who's been paying millions to Capita for a failed contract with the council. So we can talk about the economic arguments and the academic evidence, and if we're given space to make those arguments, we will win again and again. And we can talk about compensation and how much the shareholders should get, and why public ownership is an absolutely brilliant deal for the public purse. We can explain that we can save money on shareholder profits, on the lower cost of borrowing and investing for government, on the fact that we won't need to create and regulate artificial markets where they don't belong, about the fact that we can return profits to the public purse when we have profitable public assets. But we also need to remind the media and each other of why this matters, which is that public services are probably the best, most wonderful, noble, civilized thing that human beings have ever invented. They exist to improve all our lives, and right now, they're only working for a handful of people. I started campaigning for better trains over 10 years ago, so I've seen how privatisation fails train passengers. I was appalled when George Osborne started selling off our 500-year-old Royal Mail to private investors. My parents worked for the NHS, and I couldn't believe that this government privatised, that the coalition government privatised the NHS, and that this government is continuing to hand it out in pieces to the likes of Richard Branson. So I started to join the dots, and the fact is that whenever privatisation happens, whether it's the railways or Royal Mail, whether it's care work or council services, what we see is that costs go up, quality goes down, and accountability goes out of the window. The evidence shows this, and people know it. That's why there's huge support, and there has always been huge support for public ownership. That's why Philip Hammond's promise to extend the young person's rail card is woefully inadequate, because public ownership of our railways would mean we could reduce fares for everyone. And 76% of us, 76% of us want public ownership, and that includes the young people that Hammond was aiming at. And that's because people aren't stupid. People know that the idea of a consumer market in public services is ridiculous. You don't get to choose which train you travel on or where the water comes from when it's coming out of your tap. These are natural monopolies. I started We Own It in 2013 to be a voice for everyone who wanted to see public ownership. And I didn't know how we were going to get there. We've had some important victories along the way, which we're really proud of. We've helped to push back the privatisation of Network Rail. We've worked with other campaigners to stop the privatisation of the Land Registry. And recently, over the summer, we helped to stop the privatisation of NHS professionals, which we were really, really happy about. But now, because of Labour's brilliant manifesto pledges, there are much bigger victories that we're on the cusp of, and we're having a whole new conversation. It's becoming ever more clear that public ownership isn't some crazy idea. It's already happening around the world and right here in the UK. We have Channel 4, the BBC, Ordnance Survey, the Met Office, the Royal Mint, Scottish Water. These are all publicly owned institutions working well. We have 11 councils running brilliant bus services themselves and doing a great job and reinvesting profits. We know that water and energy can be run in public ownership because hundreds of cities across the world are doing just that. And right here in the UK, we awarded our new local public ownership awards to Robin Hood Energy and Bristol Energy, which are new council-owned energy companies. We know that the railways can be run in public ownership because we already have other countries' state-owned railways running our railways. We have Germany and France and Holland doing it right now, so we know that that works. And when East Coast was in public ownership, it was a huge success. This isn't about going back to the past. I'm really tired of being asked whether I remember British Rail and the soggy sandwiches. This is about the public ownership of the future, which can build on what we've learned, but will be different and better. It should be more democratic and accountable. It should be more innovative and entrepreneurial. It should be greener. It should be more caring. It should be more efficient. We need to think about the future. The Victorians built the public infrastructure of the 19th century. We need to think about the public infrastructure of the 21st century and what that looks like. We need to think about the new technologies and the new public services that are emerging, like driverless cars, and the new internet monopolies, which need to work for all of us. To the handful of people who sold off our public services without permission, our water, our energy, our railways, our buses, our Royal Mail, we say, we're taking them back. And when we do, they'll be working for all of us. To the handful of people who are undermining our public services right now, our schools, our hospitals, our libraries, our parks, our council services, who are running them down, undermining them, and opening the door for the private sector, we say, we're taking them back too. And we'll be reinstating them at the heart of our communities. To the shareholders, we say, step aside. You've had enough now. And to the regulators, we say, it's probably time to find a new job. Because this isn't about that handful of people. It's about the future that all the rest of us want to share in. Margaret Thatcher said there's no such thing as society. Well, I don't believe that. I believe people want to get up in the morning and do a good job. They want to make things better. They want to solve problems. They want to care for each other. And they want to be part of something. Our schools and hospitals, our public transport, our water and energy, they're not optional extras. They're not consumer products. And they're not market opportunities. They're vital public services that are the lifeblood of our society, which does exist, and we should all be proud of them. We built them, we paid for them, we use them, and we should all own them. Thank you very much.